Today, I'm going to give you a quick crash course on hand planes. I'm going to teach you 3 things over a 3-part series. So one is how to take a hand plane apart. I'm going to take it all the way apart, other than I'm not going to take the handles off because I don't need to. But useful for if you buy a new hand plane or refurbishing a plane, old plane, setting it up. You know, you need to know all of the parts, how to do it, what to look for. So I'm going to walk through all of that. Second thing is I'm going to teach you how to sharpen this. That's something that you're going to have to do constantly. I was just using this yesterday. It was sharp. Now it's not sharp. So depending on how often you use it, it's almost like a daily activity. And it's quick. So I'll show you that. And then lastly, I'll show you how to tune it up. There's a lot of fine adjustments in here, and I'll teach you a little bit about how to use it, what you want to look for, and just some of my tips and tricks. So look forward to those future videos on sharpening and on the fine tuning. This one here is going to be all on plane anatomy and yeah, how to take it apart, how to put it back together. But first, this does not look like a plain shirt, does it? Much better. Let's get started. First thing, you have your lever cap. Sometimes a lever cap is a lever screw. So it's called a lever cap because it has a lever. This one has a screw. You have to untighten it. I don't like this as much as a lever cap. This is so much easier to use. This was a, I don't know, $25 plane at Home Depot. It was my first plane that I ever bought. This one is a vintage one that I actually got from my wife's grandfather. So, you know, this is fine, but it's just so much easier. You pop the lever off and it comes right off. It's important because this is the thing that you do most often, is take off the lever cap and then remove the blade assembly. So the blade assembly is 2 parts. You have the chip breaker, which is on top, and then you have the iron, also known as a blade, on the bottom, and it's all secured with this screw. So to take it apart, you just take your lever cap, which fits perfectly in there, as your screwdriver, twist that off a little bit, and then undo it with the fingers, and I'm going to show you on the other side. At this point, you want to actually pull this back. You don't want to go forward because you don't want to nick the edge of your iron there where the sharp part is. So if you get to nicking that, then you're going to spend a lot more time sharpening. So pull it back. You want to probably pull it back pretty far, like this, up this channel. That's why it's so long. And then twist it 90 degrees sideways like that, and then you can advance it forward to its hole to remove it. So now you have the iron, the lever cap, and the chip breaker. And those are the 3 things that you're going to take out all the time. A sharp blade is essential to a good working hand plane. If your blade is dull, you're not going to get the performance. No matter how well you set it, everything up, you're not going to get the performance you want out of it. So keep a sharp blade. Tune in to my next video where I'm going to show you how to do it and show you that it should only take a minute or 2, pretty quick. For the rest of the plane, you have the frog here, and the frog is where all of the magic happens for a hand plane. This is, what I'm covering right now is the standard bench plane. I'm talking about bevel down, kind of more standard traditional bench planes. There are things like a little block plane, and that is a bit different in the way it works. Still has a lever cap, very similar, still has an iron, but no frog. Your adjustment screws right here, and it has a few other little tips and tricks about it. So maybe in a future video I'll cover these little guys. Very useful tools too. The frog. So the frog can move forward and backward by this. There's a screw down in here. The important part is, and I'll show you how to adjust this, Generally, you need to adjust it once and set it and forget it. So I'll show you how to do that. This screw here is the tensioning screw, and I'll show you when we put it back together how that works in association with the lever cap. And then you have your depth adjustment wheel here, and this thing moves this little lever up and down to push the blade up and down for a deeper or a more shallow cut. And then you have the lateral adjustment lever, and what this does is it will angle your iron. So it will move it, depending on which way you push it, it will move your iron like this, back and forth, so that you can do a deeper cut on one side or the other, and I'll show you why that's important later. But first, we'll go ahead and take it apart. So this is where you need a screwdriver. The frog is secured with 2 screws that are put into slots. And so you just remove those or loosen them up and leave them in there because we don't want to lose them. So, whoops. So just loosen them up a little bit. And then you can see that all loose now. Lift it straight up. Those will stay right in there, stay put. I don't want to lose any screws. And now you can see the body of the plane. The body of the plane has a few different features. There's the throat right in there. That's where the blade goes through. This is the mating surface for the frog. And then you have the frog adjustment screw. And then of course your handles. So the back one here is a tote. The front one is the knob. I'm not going to remove those. If you have a really old plane that you need a lot of rust in here and you need to have it repainted, or you need to repaint it yourself, you're going to want to remove those, remove the rust, and repaint. Obviously, this one's in really good condition. So generally, you never really have to take those off. Of course, unless you break one and then you have to make a new one. All right, let's bring it in a little bit closer here and I'll show you how to put it back together. Okay, first things first, you see all this sawdust in here and there's a little chip. You want to remove that. That can get underneath your frog. But when you're putting it back together, you see this surface here and this surface here, that's what the frog rests on. So you want to make sure that that is nice and clean. So easiest way to get rid of that is to blow it out. And dust in the air. There we go. Now, another important part, you see how this, where my finger is kind of highlighting that little angled part right there? That is used in conjunction with the frog. And so your frog sits here on this surface, but that little part is what you want to line the frog up to make sure that it's all in the same plane. And that's very important. That's where this adjustment screw comes in, which will move the frog back and forth to make sure that you have it lined up correctly. If you buy a new plane that's like that Buck Bros one from Home Depot, it's probably not set right, so you're going to want to do this. If you have it at a slight angle either way, then that's going to be a problem. So here's how you adjust your frog. And you don't have to take it all the way out to do that. You can just loosen up those a little bit, screws, and then you can move it back and forth. So let's put the frog back in. Oh, before I do that, back of the frog here has your depth adjustment wheel, and this thing, again, you can see it move that lever. So it's moving that lever down and back up, and you notice how slowly it moves it. Well, that's because you want to do very fine increments. When you're making shavings, you're making a thousandth or a hundredth of an inch, taking a very, very small amount off, up to, 30-second or so. And so every time you twist that, you're moving that just a hair down. And it's extremely important that you have those fine-tune adjustments. Usually when I'm adjusting this thing in practice, I'm only moving it about that much at a time. So, I don't know, 1/8 of a turn, 1/12 of a turn, something like that, and that's all you need for fine tuning. The other part is this here. This sits in that screw, and that's what for the frog down here, and that's what that screw, how it holds on to the frog to move it back and forth. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole anatomy. Now, to reassemble, you just put this back in where it came from and wiggle it around a little bit to try to get it seated, and then feel that your screws go back in their homes. So they're sticking straight up. I know they're back in there, and I'm going to go ahead and start tightening them down, but I am not going to tighten them all the way at this point. Right now I just want to get it so that the frog is sitting where it's going to sit, because then we will come back by and test it with a ruler. So if you don't have one of these, I have a blog about the top 3 tools that you need in your workshop, and this is one of them. This is probably my most used tool, and here's one of its many uses. So to check that your frog is in the correct plane with the body, you can use this flat surface to just put it on there like your iron would sit, and then slide it down. And if you can slide it down with no resistance, no catching here at the bottom, you know that your frog is either too far forward that way, or it's perfect. This one I've already reset, so I know it's perfect, but if it catches like right there, and I'll actually, here, let me move the frog back so you can see this. There we go. It's a pretty extreme example. You can see there how far back that is. You can see the metal underneath, and now it stops. It's not going to go, that ruler's not going to go all the way down. So we know we need to move it back forward. The way to do that is, again, there's that little screw in there. Just go ahead and twist it forward, and we're getting closer now. Now you see how it can move a little side to side there. The way to check for that, to make sure that we have it all in the right spot, is to start to snug these down a little bit more. You can still move it with that screw. That's the beauty of the screw, just like this one. Under tension, it will still move. Under tension, that one will still move to a point. You can't snug them all the way down, but I just tighten them a little bit. We are still, you can feel it with my finger, still a little bit far back. So I'm going to go ahead and push it forward just a wee bit until I visually see it hit the edge there, right about there. And I can tell by my finger. And so you can look and try to do this by eye, but don't do that. You really want to do this by feel. So that's where the ruler comes in. You can feel that you're gliding past here, and I'm gliding past here. I'm actually catching just a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I think my frog is probably tilted a little bit, actually this way. So this end is a little far back compared to that end. So what I'm going to do is just give it a little tap on this side. Give it a little tap here. Feeling to see if we're in the right plane again. And, you know, we're feeling pretty good. We're going to test again with the ruler. Okay, no catching on that side. No catching on that. Last thing we need to look for is to make sure the frog's not too far forward. So I said don't use your eye, but this time we're going to use our eye. I'm going to put this on here, and I'm going to look to see if I'm touching all the way. And it looks like we might have a slight gap. It's hard to see on the camera there. We might have a slight gap there. Let's see on this side if I can get you at the right angle. This side looks great. So what that means is we still have this side a little bit far forward, and so I'm just going to push on it a little bit. Again, these are tight, so it's hard to move, but I did feel it shift just slightly, and we close that gap up. I don't see it anymore. So with that, we are good to go. I'm going to snug these back down all the way, and I'm going to put pressure here. I'm going to hold this frog in place while I turn this the last eighth of a turn or so to make sure that nothing moves. So hold it, and now it's tight. Good. Nothing will move there. We have our frog back in. It is reset. Now we can go ahead and put our iron blade assembly back together. So in the next video, I'll show you how to sharpen this thing. For now, we'll just put it back together. So you can see on this, there's the back and there's the front. Call it that way because the front has the bevel, and you can see the bevel there. Now, on a beveled down plane, you want it to ride like that in your plane. I've made this mistake before, so don't try to put it in there this way, which is kind of the intuitive way for a new beginner on this, is to put the sharp pointy part down so it digs into the wood, but you actually want it the other way. If you put it in with the bevel down and a bevel, or the bevel up in a bevel down plane, it's not going to work. It's going to be all funky. You're going to try to adjust stuff, and it's just not going to be good. So make sure that you have it the right way. One way to tell is that logo there. Tool manufacturers like to show their logo, so the logo should be showing out so you can see it. If you have it the other way, you don't see the logo, then flip it over. Now, we're going to put the chip breaker back in the same way we took it out. Just a tip here, this chip breaker, this surface, it just touches on the edge. That should be nice and flat, just like the back of your iron should be nice and flat. So if it's not, you can hone it down a little bit on a sharpening stone. This one I know is good because I've already checked it. So again, 90 degrees, I just slid the chip breaker in its slot, or in its hole, and I'm going to slide it back and turn it sideways again. And again, we don't want this little edge here nicking this corner, because that's going to undo our hard work sharpening. So once we have it back in line, just going to move it forward, and there's a bit of a debate on this, but I like to put it as far forward as I can, with probably, I'm going to go metric here, about a millimeter or so of space between, or of iron showing. The reason why this is important, as the chips come up, they push them up and back, and it will allow for a cleaner cut, less tear out is why that's designed that way. So once I get it pretty good, then what I'm going to do is just hand tighten it to keep it in place, and then I'm going to come back with my lever cap, and I'm going to tighten it down all the way. And you want that nice and tight. If you don't have it nice and tight, then as you're planing, you're going to actually push this back, or you can do the worst thing and move forward too far. So make sure that's tight. Now put it back in the plane. Easy peasy. Slide it in there. Put it on the little lever that controls the depth, and give it a little wiggle. You can give it a little wiggle with this too to make sure that it's seated. You just want to make sure it's all the way in there, and you want to make sure that that screw is facing down. There's a little pocket for it I didn't show right there. That's where the screw sits. So you want that screw facing down. You want this in here. Give it a little wiggle. Make sure it's properly seated, and reinstall your lever cap. And then you just push the lever down to tighten it all up. Now nothing should move. This shouldn't move. This shouldn't move. This lever cap is, it's got a cam action, and it's putting pressure on this part of the chip breaker, and it's using this screw here to apply that pressure. So if this is too loose, then you're going to need to tighten it down. I like to actually tighten it while it's already assembled, because it's easy to get it too tight or too loose if you don't have it already assembled. The best way to tell if it is too loose or too tight, really, is you want to take it, you want to hold it like you would hold your plane, which is like this, nice pistol grip. You use your index finger to turn this. If you can turn it with one finger pretty easily, then you have it right. You don't want to have to come in here every time if it's too tight, you don't want to have to come in here and use two hands to try to adjust this, because your other hand should be up here in some fashion. So one finger adjustment and you're good. If it's too loose, then applying very little pressure, this thing will spin. So just check to see if it's spinning freely, tighten this down. If it's not moving at all, then loosen this up. But this is good, so don't need to do any adjustments there. That is it for how to tear down and reassemble a plane, how to do some of your major adjustments, I'll call them. We'll come back later. We'll go ahead and we'll sharpen this blade and show you my easy step-by-step process on that. It only takes a couple of minutes to do, honestly, especially if it's already fairly sharp. So I'll show you from very, very old, brand new blade to get it sharp. And then if you're just going to touch it up, I'll show you that process too, and how quick it can be. And then that'll be the next video. And then the video after that will be fine-tuning this using all of these micro adjusters. And how to get a nice clean shaving, how to take thick shavings, which is also important, because when you take thick shavings, you speed up your work. When you take fine shavings, then you're creating a finishing kind of surface. So we'll cover both of those topics in future videos. If you found this video interesting, if you learned something about a little hand plane action, please give me a like and a subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, as I'm starting up this channel, trying to grow it. Encourages me to keep on going and making videos like this to help all of you. So see you on the next one.